Hello everyone and welcome to another casual review. Today I'm talking about Final Fantasy VI Pixel Remaster. Yes, at last I got to the final game in the Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster collection. I did give myself a little bit of a break from Final Fantasy just because I was starting to feel burnt out from Final Fantasy after playing through Final Fantasy V, and so I didn't think it was fair to Final Fantasy VI to go into the game already feeling burnt out with the series. And I'm really glad I did, because Final Fantasy VI is such an amazing game that it really deserves its own spotlight. Out of all of the traditional Final Fantasy games, this one is probably my favorite, and you can absolutely see a huge production value upgrade in terms of Final Fantasy V to Final Fantasy VI. For one, the sprites are larger, which allows for more detail. Now, because I played through all of the Pixel Remaster collection, obviously the visuals are going to be pretty similar, but just comparing like the base Final Fantasy V to the base Final Fantasy VI, it is a pretty big jump. But I do think that the real upgrades in this game are in terms of its characters and its world building. When somebody thinks of Final Fantasy VI, you probably are thinking of the main cast of playable characters, and it's often up to debate even who is the main character of Final Fantasy VI. There are arguably about 3 or 4 main characters, but every single character invokes main character energy. There are some optional playable characters that you can unlock later on the game, but even they invoke some kind of main character energy. Every single character is unique gameplay-wise and visually, and they all have some sort of backstory. Now, some have more of a backstory than other characters, especially these optional characters, but I mean, oh my gosh, such an incredible cast of characters. I just played Xenoblade Chronicles X, and while I did really enjoy Xenoblade Chronicles X, if you asked me who are the playable characters in Xenoblade Chronicles X, I probably couldn't tell you that many by name and what's unique about them. If you asked me to tell you all of the main playable characters of Final Fantasy VI, then I definitely would be able to tell you a good majority about them and what I like about them. To be fair though, I am kind of comparing apples to oranges here. I'm comparing a traditional JRPG to more of an modern day action RPG, and so I get that, but so many characters are so unique and personable, even disregarding like the action, even disregarding the combat of each of these characters. And so we start the game playing as Terra Branford, and she is being brainwashed while controlling a Magitech piece of equipment. And Terra Branford is unique in this world because she has access to magic. She can cast magic spells. And in most of the world, the magic has been completely eradicated, and so this is a very unique trait. However, the evil emperor has somehow come across access to magic themselves, and so they are really tapping into this magic in order to have a better grasp on the world. And I think this would be a good time to kind of talk about what spoilers you can expect or not expect. And I'm going to be pretty light and vague in terms of spoilers, but I may get into the individual characters' motivations without trying to spoil too much. I just want to really talk about the characters because they're definitely one of the strong points about the game, in my opinion. And so I want to give each character kind of a little bit of a spotlight and kind of talk about the world, but I'm going to try and be cryptic for those of you who have not played the game yet. So obviously, near the beginning of the game, Terra Branford, she is not mind-controlled anymore, and she is starting to be assisted by Locke. And Locke is always accused of being a thief, but he claims that he is a treasure hunter, so kind of like one of those rapscallion Han Solo-esque types is how I envision him, and so he's the thief. While I did enjoy playing as him, he definitely wasn't one of the highlights for me, like Terra was, but he's still charming in his own way. I feel like Locke has a little bit of White Knight syndrome, where he just feels he has to go and save the damsel in distress, even though they sometimes might not necessarily need it. You got Edgar Figaro, who is is like the king of the Figaro castle, and the castle has its own mechanisms and everything like that, but he's kind of a womanizer himself. And his brother Sabin, who is like a martial arts kind of character, and as you play through the game, you will learn more about their backstories and their relationships with each other. You have Cyan, who's basically like your samurai, and he has Bushido techniques that are pretty cool. You got Gao, who is almost like this feral child, but you get to learn more about like why he's a feral child and why he's out on his own. Edgar's going to be using tools mostly as abilities, and these tools do various effects, and then you basically purchase these tools in order to unlock these abilities. And Sabin has almost like you have to input certain controls in order to execute his moves properly. This was kind of annoying if I was trying to play one-handed, because I like to set my controls that way, but it is kind of cool in a turn-based game how you have to input certain controls in order to execute the actions. Gao, he's kind of different, and he's definitely one of those like high potential but difficult to master type of characters, because you almost have to like go to a certain area and hope that you encounter certain enemies and defeat them, and then Gao will then learn those enemy abilities, but then he kind of goes on autopilot when you select those enemies. Really what you want to do is you want to encounter a stray cat and have him learn the stray cat abilities, because that's going to give you some massive physical output. But he does have some pretty decent magical moves as well. A lot of people argue that Celeste is the main character, and Celeste is kind of like a pawn of the Emperor before she sees the error in her ways, and she was basically like infused with Magitech. She kind of has like a warrior attack build, but she can also cast magic. Kind of like a jack of all trades, really. One of the characters that I could never wrap my head around how to play him gameplay-wise is Setzer. And Setzer is like this gambler type. He's the one who owns the airship. And his main mechanic is he basically has this slot machine, and you're trying to use this slot machine and just pressing your luck to try and execute some really strong attacks. However, if you get the wrong combination, then your party automatically dies and you just lose the game and it's game over. And so I never wanted to use that ability, just for the off chance that I got that effect triggered and then I'd have to start over. And so I don't know. I never really knew what to do with Setzer. Do you attack with your basic attacks, or do you have him more as a spellcaster? And so usually I didn't use him that much. And then you also have Strago and Realm, who are also magic casters, and their grandfather and granddaughter, respectively. And they were really powerful mages, but you don't see them until a little later in the game, and so they don't get as much gameplay time as the other characters. And then you have optional characters as well, like Shadow is this mercenary ninja, and so he's typical to Final Fantasy style. You'll be like throwing scrolls and stuff with him. He also is accompanied by the best dog boy, Interceptor, and Final Fantasy is no stranger to dog companions. You got Mog, the playable Moogle, and he kind of learns these different dances based on the area that you're in. He's actually kind of like a geomancer, but eventually I built him more like a dragoon. So the idea of having like a Moogle dragoon is really cool. Some of the characters aren't introduced until way later in the game, and so I didn't have that much time to play with them. They felt kind of gimmicky. Like you get access to a mimic, and then you get access to like a berserker who just kind of does his own thing. But he's a Yeti, so you really want to have a fighting Yeti as part of your party. So that's all of the characters. I know I spent a lot of time talking about them, but they are all very interesting gameplay-wise. Most of them have some kind of unique story or plot as to why they're there in the world and why they are fighting with your team. But the overall idea is you're all a motley crew banding together in order to take down the evil empire, and specifically this guy named Kefka. And I'm not going to talk too much about Kefka. He is a very interesting bad guy, and you are are very motivated to take him down, but that's all I'm going to say as far as the plot and the lore and everything about that. Any potential spoilers plot-wise are completely over now. As far as playing through these characters, I do feel like the game would have been a lot easier for me if I just picked out my favorite 4 or 5 characters and really focus on leveling them up and just having them carry any kind of scenario. Like Realm is, in my opinion, the strongest mage, and so if I just powered her up and her spells and all of her abilities, equipped her with the best gear and everything like that, she could probably carry the majority of the game unless you encounter some enemies that are resistant or immune to spells. But I'm the type of gamer who likes to play all the characters. Like, I just want to try them all out. I want them all to have a time to shine in the sun. That's probably why I'm very bad at fighting games, because I just want to try them all out and I want to play them all. And so I tried to keep all of my playable characters the same level. I tried to give them all some time in the sun. That being said, like, Final Fantasy VI isn't that difficult of a game, especially if you kind of know what you're doing, and so you can pretty much beat the game with any party as long as you play your cards right. And there are times when in the story your characters are going to be splitting up and doing their own thing, so maybe it would be beneficial to give each character a little time, some experience, some gear, so that when you're forced to play as these characters, you don't feel as useless. And I really like that about the plot of this game, you know, like, because so many characters invoke main character energy, it is kind of nice that you're getting to bounce between all of them. I just wish some of them were introduced a little earlier in the game so we got some more time to play around with them. Now, mechanic-wise, like, each character has their own abilities, but this game has the mechanic of Magicite, and Magicite are these stones, essentially, and they are how your characters learn magic and how you can boost up your characters stat-wise as well. You basically, like, can equip a character with Magicite. This Magicite also has a summon included with it, and so this is where summons come into play. I don't like this nearly as much as having a dedicated summoner like in Final Fantasy V, but it is kind of cool that you have access to so many unique summons this way. When a character has a Magicite equipped, some Magicite will offer bonus stats when this character levels up and they have the Magicite equipped. So this is nice for your non-magic casting characters, like your strength characters. If they have a strength Magicite equipped and they level up, then they will get a couple bonus points in strength. But this is a really unique way to learn new magic abilities, because as you are battling with this Magicite equipped, eventually you will master these spells, and then your characters just have these spells forever. I really like the system of Magicite because it has potential for all characters, and like I mentioned earlier, if you really know what you're doing going into this game, you will be able to know, like, what Magicite to equip to what character in order to really min-max their stats as they level up and what kind of spells they learn. There is a ton of potential for missing some potential Magicite in this game, and even playable characters and a special unique equipment. We haven't even talked about the equipment yet, but basically each character can equip 2 relics, and the relics themselves are like accessories, except they're super meaningful and they can really affect the gameplay of a character. Like, you know, some accessories in other RPGs are like, oh, makes you immune to fire or makes you heal when you get hit by an ice spell, but like a lot of these relics automatically cast like haste on you or make it so you can equip a weapon in both hands. Some of them like change the main ability that the character has. So for like Locke, for instance, he can attack and steal at the same time with a certain relic. And so these relics can really change up the gameplay depending on what you find. Same with the Magicite as well. But if you want to like really dive into the characters' backstories and their personalities, there's a lot of missable cutscenes depending on who is in your party and who is not. Because you can only take 4 playable characters at one time with you out into the world, and so if you don't have the right characters when you visit certain areas or rest that's in certain inns or things like that, you're gonna miss out on a lot of potential backstory for each one of these characters. And so that's why I think even if you know what you're doing, even if you know where you're supposed to go, if you want to experience everything this game has to offer, it's probably in your best interest to follow some sort of walkthrough, especially the second half of the game. There are 8 potential side boss dragons that you can encounter as you play through the game, and these are like not particularly strong bosses, but I guess I wouldn't consider many of the bosses particularly strong. But if you defeat like all 8 of these dragons, then you can unlock a magicite as well. And so I was enjoying my time so much when I was playing this game that I did do the majority of the things that this game has to offer. Not all of it. I did not 100% complete this game, but I did get all 8 dragons, and I found all the backstories for all the characters and unlocked all their super abilities that they have available to them. I did find all of the magicite, and because I did that, I felt extremely powerful by the end of the game, which is what I love. I love just destroying and demolishing everything by the end of the game. It's like a little reward for really mastering the mechanics of the game and really going out of my way to do these side quests and buffing up my characters. One thing that is kind of frustrating about buffing up my characters, though, is the bosses don't give XP. Like, what the heck? That's supposed to be my main source of XP, but they do trigger the spells that you can learn from the magicite, so I guess I'll give them that. And like I said earlier, you don't really need to grind for XP, especially if you pick a handful of favorites that you buff up and neglect some of the other playable characters. The only boss that gave me a real run for my money is the final boss, and I'm not gonna really talk about the final boss. I'm just gonna say, like, holy cow, those of you who have played the game, that final boss is epic. Like, such a great final boss. And I haven't even talked about the music in this game. The soundtrack in this game is absolutely wonderful. Like, if you're a big fan of the 16-bit era, this game is top-tier visuals and top-tier soundtrack. You probably already know that because you've probably already played this game, though. It took me 25 hours to beat this game. I'm not sure if that's longer than the average or shorter than the average, but like I said, I was following a walkthrough. I did the majority of the side content that was available to me, but I had an absolute blast playing this game. Like, this is my favorite game out of the whole Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster. Probably my favorite traditional Final Fantasy game. Like, a lot of people really praise Final Fantasy VII. I've played both, and I do think Final Fantasy VI is better than Final Fantasy VII. So obviously, I'm going to give this game a 5 out of 5. I think it is amazing, and even if you don't get to all of the Final Fantasy games in the Pixel Remaster collection, you definitely have to play Final Fantasy VI. Well, guys, that's it for me. I hope you're not too angry at me for my rambling. I hope I didn't spoil too much of Final Fantasy VI. I tried to have a good balance of talking about the game without spoiling too much. I'm just such a fan of the characters, and I want to talk about all of them. Like, I'm really trying to restrain myself because, man, that big spoiler, I want to talk about it, but I won't. But those of you who have played the game, you know what I'm talking about. It is such a good game. And how about this collection? I mean, the Pixel Remaster collection as a whole, what an amazing collection of games if you're a fan of traditional JRPGs. Each and every one of these 6 games brought me a lot of great joy, from the first one to the last one. Part of me almost just wants to start over and play through them all again. And this isn't even my first playthrough of all of them. This is my second playthrough of all 6 Pixel Remaster games. Video games are good. Final Fantasy is good. I think you are good. And let me know if you have any questions or comments about Final Fantasy VI Pixel Remaster, and I'd love to hear what you have to say. Otherwise, I will talk to you later. Bye!